Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Laura Rancourt.
And I am Kim Crumbly, and together we are Counselor Accents. Laura, you're looking very birthday cake-ish.
You know, somebody told me I wore this shirt this week, and somebody told me I looked like a party, which I think is a really good compliment. I feel like a party.
Love it. Where did you get this said shirt?
I got this at that website, Sheen, who is not sponsoring this podcast. But
because you get a lot of stuff from them.
I do. And it was $8, which I think is something that's notable. People need to know that. And so it came in a timely manner, no problems. I know some people have had problems there, but not me. And I've ordered several things, like you said, always reasonably priced and cute as can be. As cute online as when it arrives.
Well, okay, they will be calling you.
Yes.
And asking you not to wear their clothes anymore.
They'll offer me their men's line.
Would you start wearing these instead? So have you had a great weekend? I'm leading this up so you'll ask me.
Oh, okay. I have had a great weekend. I spent 3 hours at a baby shower yesterday.
3?
Yes, it was supposed to be at a restaurant, and so it's been advertised for weeks, months, that it's at a restaurant. And then the day before, they said, "We're sorry, we will not take reservations." So there were like 20 of us that had to just wait for the first available seating for 20.
Oh, that's painful.
It was painful, and you know how I get when I haven't eaten. And it was at 10, so it's supposed to be like a brunch thing. And
yes.
So I thought, well, I'm not going to drink my protein shake because I'm going to make the most of my breakfast. Yeah. So I had not eaten anything, and I was sending my husband texts at like 12 saying we still do not have our food. And I'm not an intermittent faster. Like if you're an intermittent faster, you're like, oh, that's no big deal. I don't eat until 5 o'clock in the afternoon anyway. But I am not that person.
No, you're not.
I've got to eat at.
I can imagine that poor girl having to put up with you.
Well, I will say this. Somebody across the table from me, I am going to have to apologize to her because I know that I was very curt because they got on the topic of washing your face. And I do not wash my face every night. And please don't send me hate mail. I don't. And so she was like saying, "You've got to wash your face every night." And I was like, "I don't." She said, "But you've got to. I said, "I'm not going to start now." So, I mean, I was just very short, like, it's not going to happen. And I thought that was really rude of me. To be like, not going to happen.
It's disgusting. It really is. And I'm just ashamed of you. And ashamed our listeners are going to have to hear that you do not wash your face.
Well, they heard last week that you never, ever wash your hair.
Still haven't.
You got cut this week.
I did get cut. I just, instead of washing it, I have decided just to cut off the dirt, start over again, never wash. Just, have you ever tried the shampoo that does not make any suds?
Yeah.
That just is a waste. I have to have a good sud.
All right.
I got to have a good sud. But anyway, thank you for asking me about my weekend. I had a surprise. I had front row, smack dab in the middle, seats to see Air Supply. And I have heard all the jokes from my children who have said things like, at this point, I imagine they do need Air Supply. Were they hooked up to some kind of oxygen?
Is that they sing, "I'm all out of love.
I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without you." I may have made a fool of myself. I am not sure.
Doubt.
That close to the stage, their little bodyguard had to reroute me off of.
He worked for his money, huh?
He worked for his money, but when they first came out, it is a bit of a shock because they are my parents' age, okay, and to see rockers who have turned into your parents. And I am not a spring chick. So you can imagine, and I'm looking around the audience and we're all long in the tooth.
That's your bedtime. Was it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon?
It was not over until 10 and people were leaving. I could hear them going, it's going to be 11 o'clock before we get home. How are we going to get home? I'm like a bunch of old people out on the road as myself. And I hate ageism. So I wish I could take that back. I hate ageism and I just did it. But there is some truth to but let me just say, when they came out, it was a bit of a shock. I'm just going to be honest. But when they started, and it took me right back to the 80s, I was on the dance floor in the school gym. I was the queen of the 80s and I was swaying. I literally may have lost my mind last night, rehearing all of this. It was, so my husband and I went, and I will have to post a picture to Instagram.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. I don't know. It was a surprise, but it was just so much fun. It was funny because it's just funny to see time pass and these people that you grew up listening to are now these old men, but they're really very, very, still very talented. Anyway, thank you for asking about my wonderful weekend. But yes,
Really
it was
excited.
like 11:30. We were like, woo.
I'm excited that you got to do that. That sounds like fun.
It was fun. It was really fun. It sounds better than the 3-hour wait for.
Well, I feel like over the past couple of weeks, you and I have been those people that when you would watch TV back in the 80s or 90s and there would be those sitcoms and people would always have tickets to events and you're thinking,
Yes.
how do you get those tickets? Like you've got to get on the Ticketmaster and it takes I don't know, it's a process to get tickets.
Yes,
But on those
yes.
shows, they always had last minute tickets to something. But that's happened to you and me both in the past couple of weeks.
Yes, you went and saw Leanne
Morgan.
Not the singer,
Right? Not the singer,
the
but
comedian.
the Big Panty Tour. And I just happened to call my mom that morning and she said, hey, we've got a free ticket to see Leanne Morgan. You want to go with us? And I was like, well, yes, I do. So I went with her and her teacher friends. And she, the audio was kind of muffled. It was hard to hear. I had to strain my ears to hear.
Ah,
But she leaned over to me during a particularly racy part. I mean, not that Leanne Morgan, she's very clean. And so it wasn't super
it's
racy.
just, I know how your mom is.
Yes.
So you did not want to repeat.
I was
Not
way on
going to
tight.
repeat.
So
Yeah.
she leaned over to me and she was like, I can't hear a thing. And I said, I can't either. Because I thought, I don't even want to tell her what's going on right now. But now I have to keep this up because she's still talking about, I hate that we couldn't hear during Leanne Morgan. And I'm like, me too. I hate it. I did hear it.
Well, this rocker had his fingernails polished and he had his earrings on and he was just still that 80s rocker. Back in the 80s, you kind of had that mullet, but it was not the cool mullets they have now. It was a different type mullet. I don't even know how to. So anyway, because you had a lot more volume up at the bang area, than the mullet in the back with the perm.
So
With the perm. I mean, you had to have a perm in the back of the mullet. So they still have, especially the shorter, the one that does the lead. He has that perfect 80s mullet and he's still, and I'm like, I really think you might want to rethink that rocker look. I would just own my age here, but they never do. I mean, they just don't. They just don't, and that's fine. Once you hear them, it doesn't matter. If they've still got it, they've still got it. Now, some do not still have it, but they still have it. Anyway, enough about Air Supply, who nobody knows who that is. My son, I was singing "Making Love Out of Nothing at All," and my son goes, "How appropriate at their age." He said that song has aged well. Making love out of nothing at all. Okay, I'll stop. So back onto our real jobs, which is school counseling. We are going to answer a couple of questions and talk about a few techniques that you might want to try this year when you have students who you are trying to help through difficult situations. So, and there's something that we've not talked about that I want to somehow on this, I want to talk about this. So you may want me just to
Ooh.
start off with this or bring it up later.
Oh, okay. I thought this was like an announcement that I didn't know anything about or something.
No, it's on with the techniques.
Okay.
It's just something I've noticed in our world, and I would
Go ahead.
like. Okay, I have noticed that I've had more students dealing with anxiety that are not students coming from homes where you would expect. And I know that that's always been true, but it seems to be more true. I'm having more families who these kids have not been through some of the traumatic things that some of my students who come from a lot of brokenness or whatever. These are all teachers' kids. These are your professional people's children, and they're just dealing with more anxiety, and it's things that are of the smallest nature. I dealt with some of this last week, and it's different. It just seems to be more, and I think it's that maybe the same thing that everybody's trauma is ticking up. Theirs is in that they're maintaining their perfectionism. It's all about everything has to be perfect with these kids.
Mhm.
And it just seems like I'm seeing more of that. And the only thing I know to do is to really make the student pinpoint, if they can, the things that they are anxious about, and then really work out a plan of exposure to that, to for them to see this is nothing for you to fear.
Yeah.
It's really strange that they place this amount of pressure on themselves. And I'm talking about from your top students, which we've always known those students put a lot of pressure on themselves, but it just seems to be harder on them now. So I don't know what else to do other than what you're naming, because I know what I'm dealing with is nothing for them to put this amount of anxiety into. So we go through what's the worst thing that can happen here, and it's really, there's nothing there, I mean, it's
Right.
fear of,
So what
just fear of the lunchroom line, or a fear of just anxiety of not getting something just absolutely perfect, or trying something new. I don't know if it's lack of control during the pandemic, or that inward, passing on fears to students possibly. I don't know.
Don't you feel like you've worked with me through this too?
And you too, because you were a perfectionist. I know it
Well,
doesn't. In some ways
in
you
some
are.
ways, I am so not. But as you're talking, I'm thinking about like how different you and I are, and that you've had to take me through that too. Like, so what? What if that does happen? So what? And then I realized you're right. It's really not a big deal, and it's okay.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is, and I just talked to a parent not long ago, and this kid is raised just raised in a really good home, and they try to do all the right things. But I think a lot of times all the right things come across to those kids as, I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect. And so a lot of times, and I talk to parents too, like what are you maybe inadvertently passing on to that student, that they feel like there's not there's this is a no mistake zone. So it could be their sports, but it kind of comes out though in something weird at school. But it's really the parents are perfectionists. They want them to do perfect in sports, or they want them to do perfect. And it's a lot of these kids who, I don't think the parents are bad parents. They're good parents, and they're doing everything right. But that too can lend a different set of problems. And I don't know. I've just been seeing a few more.
really interesting. And just,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make this a therapy session for myself, but I appreciate you allowing me to.
Yes.
But, when I was younger, my mom would not allow me to bring home something lower than a 95.
Yeah.
So if I brought home a 93 or a 94, it was bad news at my house.
Yeah.
And that like I seriously self-diagnosed myself with a stomach ulcer when I was about 16 or 17 because I mean, I was nervous Nelly all the time. And so hearing you talk, like I see that a lot in our parents that put this pressure in such like their heart behind it is so good. My mom's heart behind it was so good. She thought, this is going to
She's
help you.
capable of it. And
Yes.
that's the thing. They're capable of it. So
Uh-huh.
why are you not doing it? And in this, it is a different anxiety. And I saw it in my son, that anxiety. And I'm like, you have everything. You have, you've got great parents. Look around. And that's the thing you want to say, look around at these other
Right.
situations where the parenting is not there. And what are you anxious about? But I don't know the answer to that because you want your kids to do their best, but at the same time, what are you, as parents, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing it for ourselves? Are we
Right.
really okay with okay,
Well, and me as a parent, I mean, my girls are not that old, but when my oldest one brings home work and it's a B, like there's part of me that's like nervous all of a sudden because I go back to if I had brought that home, what would have happened at my house? But I'm like, okay, what is my daughter? What podcast is she going to have one day whenever she grows up? Like, my mom never made me make A's. She was always okay with C's and B's, and I wish she had pushed me harder. Like it's like one generation tries to make up
it really is. It really is. Because my parents were very young and they were great parents, but they were just, it's all good. I mean, do your homework, don't do your homework, A's, B's, C's. But so
But
we didn't.
you're well rounded, and
Well, I think they were really good parents about that. I mean, they expected good moral behavior, but as far as it being perfect, it wasn't. Nothing was perfect. But then I put it on mine. So I think you're right in that I was going, well, I could have, because I was never forced to do better. I could have done better. And so I put that on my son, who is still dealing with anxiety issues. So he does fine. There is no answer. This parenting thing, other than to say it's very hard, but it's different. You can't just look at a kid and say, because you've come from this great home, that it's going to look different. It's going to look different.
Mhm.
And then let me just say this too, and this is what I tell parents. Kids have got to go through some adversity. They've got to. Mothers and dads, and I tell parents this, if you actually want everything fixed for them, you are setting yourself up and them up for trouble. If you do not allow them to go through adversity, there's not going to be any resilience in that child.
Yeah.
So if talking to a parent, just talking to parents who want to fix this trouble, with a friend, or want to fix this all situations, especially as students are getting older in high school, or you've got to allow, the only way that they can learn, that they can cope and deal, is to actually go through adversity. I know I just heard Joy Winchester speak, and she said that, and I don't think she would mind me telling this story, her daughter was the all A scholarship, sorority she wanted, college she wanted, like the highest average, valedictorian, whatever. And after the pandemic, she just is just spiraling downward. While the son, who's always had dyslexia, and just, he did not even go to his graduation because that's how much he hated schools, is thriving, making good money. He's a welder, and she is not. And she said it hit me when the pandemic happened in their lives. That was the first time she had faced adversity, because everything has always gone her way. So we have to allow kids to fall. They've got to learn. And I think that's part of those perfection in parents that we see is sometimes you've got to be perfect, and everybody around you has to be perfect two around you. There can't be. So you've got, they've got to go through some stuff. They're going to one day or another. I would rather it be under my roof so
You're
I can
exactly
control
right.
it while they're a
And
child.
I would say, I feel like we're going on a totally different track right now, but I'm okay with it. I say, let's just ride this out. But I would say if you are a parent or if you talk to parents, encourage them that you can do everything right. You can read the books and you can do everything right, but your kids are still going to do what they want to do in some cases. They're going to make mistakes. So find yourself a friendship group that understands that it's not a reflection of your parenting. It's not a reflection of how you brought them up. Sometimes they still will make mistakes, and those mistakes will have consequences from time to time. But understand,
they need to.
But understand that it's not a reflection of you as a parent, and find that friendship group that supports you as a parent that understands, hey, these are our kids and we're all here for each other. Or tell your parents at your school that they need to find that. Because, we're first-time parents always. You can have 5 kids and they're all going to be different. And it's the first time your child has ever been 10 years old. It's the first time your child has ever been 16 and driving a car. And so nobody's a parenting expert because it's our first round with every child. Every day is a new day. Yep.
And they're also, like you said, also very different from the same family, completely different kids. And I think accepting your child and loving your child is just vital. You have discipline, setting those boundaries, and that's not the issue with these children of perfection. It's a lot of issue with my kids who don't come from homes with any boundaries. They thrive on security of those. But anyway, yes, we did not mean to go down that, but that's kind of where my brain has been this last couple of weeks dealing with parents.
I do want to ask, because I've seen a lot of that too, and I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but I would say in these 3 weeks that we've been in school at in our area, I have talked to more children who are concerned about making a mistake than anything else. So I'm curious if you have a book or a resource. I would love for you to tag us in that.
Yeah.
Because I have 2 books that I read and I would love to have more. The first is The Girl Who Never Made Mistakes.
Yes.
And the second is It's Okay to Make Mistakes. But I would love to have more ideas for books.
I will tell you one of the best lessons that I do with middle school is mistakes that worked. Did you say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
My students, I pick it's a book of world-changing inventions that came about through a mistake. Something went wrong, and out of that came this invention. So I do about 10 of those in one lesson. Like I just pull out 10 that I find are interesting, and I use that as a lesson, and I talk about the mistake and then what it became. Kids, especially middle schools, are so interested because they never knew, like where Velcro came from, or why. So it's really interesting because they don't think about where we got these things. But a lot of the things we have, and penicillin being one of them, are these great world-changing things. A lot of them were just accidents. So mistakes can be important. I think that's a really good resource for older kids, high school or middle school, or even elementary. Love that too. So it's a good book. Mistakes that worked. Yeah. And then biographies, a lot of times, Milton Hershey. That's a good one. Why are you smiling at me?
I'm laughing at the way you said biographies.
How did I say it?
Well, it's kind of like when I was at Leanne Morgan and my brain had to process a little bit harder what she was saying. The way you said it, it's like it was a different word altogether.
Biographies.
Yeah, like biography.
Biography. Well, excuse me, Professor.
Well, just call me Dr. Rankhorn.
Oh,
that doesn't even go together.
It doesn't. That's a
Call
joke.
me Dr. Laura. Call me Dr. Laura.
I think that's a sex therapist, isn't it? Dr. Laura. And I am
Edit that out.
pretty sure
My mom may listen to this.
my
I
mom
gotta
may
edit
listen to this. Okay, so I think we were going to do a couple of questions, and then I was going to do something that I have been using recently and dealing with students. It's great for especially older students. So where do we want to start with this?
Well, I'm kind of thinking since we were just talking about perfectionism and actual sessions that we've been doing with our students, why don't we share a couple of techniques that we've been using right here off the bat?
Okay, I'll let you begin.
All right. So I am sure that we've talked about this, and this you may be rolling your eyes thinking, Laura, this is School Counseling 101, and that's okay. But I did talk to somebody this week who had never heard of this, who had never used this. And this was my go-to when I first started as a school counselor, and it is my go-to now. If I have a student that's brought to me and I have no idea where to start, if I have no idea what to talk to them about or anything, then I go to my clipboard wall. First of all, if you haven't heard us talk about my clipboard wall, then you need to go on our Instagram and look at it. I'll try to post a link or something in our show notes. But I have all these activities ready to pull down. If a student comes in with grief, I have a grief clipboard and I pull it off the wall, and that's what we start talking about. We use an activity off that clipboard. But one of my clipboards is feelings, and it is just an outline of a heart printed on a piece of paper. And below the heart, it has the word mad with a little checkbox beside it, sad with a little checkbox beside it, and happy with a little checkbox beside it. And so when I meet with a student, I ask them, I'll put some markers in front of them, and I ask them to find a color that they feel looks like mad. And so they'll pick that color and they color in that little box. Then we'll go to sad. Then we'll go to happy, and they pick out the color that makes them think of sad and happy. Then I ask them to tell me what other emotions they want to put on here. And that's the key usually to figure out what's going on, because whatever emotion they tell me is usually the one that they're dealing with. Not always, but I'd say 98% of the time. So if they say worried, then I usually know they're worried about something. And then they find the color that they think matches worried or anxious or whatever word they tell me. So then I tell them to pretend that heart is their heart. And I say, sometimes people say we feel our emotions in our heart. So tell me how much of your heart feels sad, or whatever our first word is. And they'll start coloring with the color that they've chosen, the portion of their heart that feels sad. And as they're doing that, I'm asking them, well, tell me what sort of things are making you feel sad. And they'll tell me, we'll do happy, we'll do mad. And then we go on to their word that they've chosen. And they'll color their heart, however much that color. And then we're talking about what's making them feel worried. Sometimes we move on to solutions, and sometimes they just feel better just to get that out and just to talk. And usually we'll look at the heart and it'll be this colored mess, like lots of different colors. And I've had students before go back and they'll have a white space and they'll start coloring it happy. That was one of my favorite sessions. There was a lot of white space after we went through all of the emotions. And so the child picked up the happy marker again and started coloring the rest of the white space happy. And when I said, well, tell me what's going on here, he said, just talking with you and getting this out is making me feel happy. And so I was like, oh my goodness. I've had other students that have expressed how even though their emotions are all mixed together, how beautiful all the colors are. And so that's given us a whole conversation point that we can talk about. So, not to sound too much like a hippie or anything, but just go with wherever the conversation goes after the child feels in the heart. Just kind of see which direction it goes and use those things like, if there is a lot of white space, just tell them, hey, I noticed there's a lot of white space left. I'm wondering what emotion is going to fill that up. Or if there's a lot of sadness, just say, what would it take to make this smaller and to make the happy bigger? So just some guiding questions like that. Just get some talking and helps them sort through their emotions. Now, I have used this with every single age group. I've used it with primary school and I've used it with high school and everything in between. And it works with every age group.
I love that because it's letting them see were they saying? And usually there is, because I've used this too. There's always another color in there, so there's something else going on.
Yeah.
And just identifying and talking about the emotions. A lot of kids need to understand emotions are not bad of themselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes their emotions scare them, and if we're explaining that emotion is not bad, it's what you do with it that can be bad, or if it stays and we can't change, flip it to where there's more. I love that. I said I wasn't going to say anything, and I did, but that was really good. I just wanted to add a little bit there to that.
Thank you.
Okay, I am going to now. This is very good with middle school, high school, or even elementary, upper elementary.
You're hesitant with elementary, but I've used it with elementary, and it works. So
okay, good. So
don't sell yourself short.
Okay. So this is Laura and I do a lot with careers, and one of the things that we do, this is taking the place of the scientific method, if you will. It's more of what is computational thinking, and just students understanding computational thinking. If they can understand computational thinking, they are able to better handle their own life problems. We were just talking about students who've not had any problems. They really don't know how to handle those problems. So if you're not familiar with computational thinking, look it up. It involves decomposition, which is breaking down a problem into smaller parts. Then we go into pattern recognition, and you're looking for trends. We're looking for abstraction. It's setting aside unnecessary details. Then the algorithm is a step-by-step set of instructions. And then the debugging is where you're coming back together and you're seeing what worked well and what didn't. With my students, I would debug. So how does this work? This is not at all a school counseling technique that I know of anywhere other than in the career realm, but I have used this with students because if we look at a problem and we say, okay, let's decompose this problem, let's break it down, then that is our mindsets and behaviors, that skills and that demonstrate self-discipline, self-control that we use. So they're able to break down a problem and then look for trends. What's worked well in the past, what doesn't work, and that falls within our long and short-term goals. And then what's not important to this. So, there are a lot of things that kids will swat at that's like a fly and it's not important. Let's take that out. And then the step-by-step, how are we going to break this down to fix this problem? If it's a problem with relational aggression, then let's decompose it. Let's break it into parts. Let's look at the trends of this. Let's set aside all the stuff that's just it's unnecessary, and then break down how we're going the problem, how we're going to do this, how are we going to solve this problem. And then debugging is what worked and what didn't work. So when students learn this, and they learn to do it in science and English, and also in their social and emotional realm of their lives, that serves them well. They're learning how to solve a problem on their own. Does that make sense at all?
It does. Yes, it does.
I can see you're going,
Well, I'm a visual learner, and so I think if we can see it written out,
look at computational thinking. Yeah. Okay, go ahead with yours.
Okay. Well, this was one that I just started thinking about. Like, we didn't talk about this, but this past week I had a student come in who had all the right answers. We call them Sunday school answers, all the right answers. But when it comes time to rubber meets the road, use those strategies, he's not doing them. So I felt myself getting frustrated, because if you can tell me the right answers, but you're not using them, like, where is the disconnect? So I knew the particular situation that had happened that caused him to be sent to me. So I'm asking him these questions, and he's telling me, okay, well, let's say it was anger. When I feel angry, I know that I can whatever, but he's not doing those things when he actually gets angry. So I know that this is a strategy. I remember learning about it when I went through school counselor school, but I've never done this before. And so I switched seats with him, and I sat in his seat and allowed him to sit in my seat. And I was like, okay, I said, you're the expert right now. And so I pretended to have an issue, and I made him like talk to me the way I would talk to him and ask me the questions and all this stuff. Anyway, it clicked with him. Like he got it. He understood.
Oh, that's
And
great.
yeah. He was like, so that's the strategy that I need to use. And I'm like, yes. And so it was just one of those really good moments where you feel like, you may have 100 sessions where you feel like, did they really get it? And then you
Yeah.
have that one. That was my one where I'm like,
That was
okay,
your one for the year.
I think he
You
got it.
can go
That's it
home
for
now.
the year. But I thought, that's something that I don't do, but maybe I should start doing more of. And I really think, well, I'll tell you this. We had to pick a word for the year at my school. My principal wanted us all to pick a word.
Yes.
So my word for the year is empowering, because I feel like if I can empower these students to solve their own problems,
Yes.
like I don't want to make them dependent on me, and I don't
Yes.
want them to not have the resources that they need. But if I can empower them through computational thinking or through making them the expert, then I fulfilled my one word and empowered them
Oh,
to
that's
solve their own
good.
problems.
That's good. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I saw with him whenever we swapped seats and he was getting to tell me, which I don't tell kids what to do. But we help them arrive at the
Yes.
solution. But when he was allowed to do that, I could see a light bulb click.
Very good. That is really good. Those are rubber meets the roads that I can start with the things that you have said. I can start doing those. So I love it. Very good.
All right, next section is we've had a couple of questions and a couple of questions, and we're going to attempt to give some answers. And we've got two questions that are very similar. So it led us kind of to the same answer in the same place. I'm just going to summarize these questions. So the first one was pretty much just like, whenever you have, let's say 350 students and you're in the rotation. And Kim, if anybody's been listening to this, they know how we feel about the rotation. But if you land in the rotation and you see that you're just creating planning time for the teachers, how do you talk to your principal about it? Where do you start, especially if this is your first job? How do you advocate and what do you do?
Go ahead and do the second one because I know what the second question is, because I think the answer is going to be the same.
Okay. All right. So again, this is a first year counselor, and this person has landed in this job and all of a sudden realized that they're the 504 coordinator. They have to head up the PST program. They are building test coordinator. They're in the rotation. They have to do individual sessions. They're expected to do small groups, and there's just a lot going on. They're also the EL or ESL, whatever it's called at your school. They're the contact person for that. So they're starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed, and they're kind of wondering, how are they going to do all of this, and how do they manage their time? So I've got a couple of ideas, and I know you do too. So I'm going to let you start.
Well, to begin with, we're all there. I say we're all, but I think there's a vast majority of school counselors who are wearing hats that it would be deemed inappropriate for school counselors by ASCA, as it should. I don't know of any counselors that I know personally who are not following, maybe not all, as many hats as what you just named, but they are wearing hats that really shouldn't be their hat. But we are in a educational school system, and we are going to follow with our systems the way it's set up. And so I can say that some of those hats have been removed that I have had, like we call it RTI, the data, that was removed from the school counselors. But we still, do 504s. And we just had a talk as school counselors to our person that's over curriculum, who's wonderful. We love her, but just talk to her about really that is not our job. And so that's how we started off with everything. And you just continue to do your job well, whatever it is, while you if you're doing your job well, people will listen to you, especially if they know what you're doing. So you make sure that you are letting everybody know what you're doing. So this person who's got all these hats needs to be pulling out the data and showing the number of students and what and two, you've got to educate on where you're supposed to be spending your time. And there is appropriate and inappropriate activities for school counselors that just is it doesn't all it would be wonderful if it all happened that way, but it is something that you could show your administrator or board or whoever to say, this is really not what our job is. So I think it's education and data is how you're going to change the tide, and building relationships with people. They'll listen to you if they can trust you and believe, you're not trying to get out of work. That's not it. You're trying to do your job effectively. You've got to make that program important. Your answer?
Very well said. Very well said. I think that I would say, first off, go with grace upon grace, and know that, we talk about the different styles of leaders. And if you go in with your list of inappropriate activities for school counselors and slam it down on somebody's desk, that is not operating.
It get you anywhere.
It's not. Bless you, by the way.
Well, thank you.
But no, it's not. It's not going to get you anywhere. And so, if you can go into a conversation with a lot of grace and say, "Hey, this is a great time in the annual administrator conference to say, you may not be aware of this," or I don't even know if I would say it like that, because that could put somebody on the defensive. I really try not to put anybody on the defensive. That's why I don't ask why questions, because it automatically puts people on the defensive. That's a little extra tidbit. But my dog is underneath me snoring, and I keep kicking him because I'm afraid that he's going to come through on this. So if you hear something that sounds like someone's snoring,
if it's your stomach or anything else, just own it.
Just own it. Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry for that little rabbit trail. But the annual administrator conference would be a great time to have some documents printed, just so that they can see where you're supposed to spend your time and maybe where you're not supposed to spend your time. In education, a lot of times, I think that we are victims of, it's always been done this way, so it's always got to be done this way.
Yeah.
And so if
that may be all your principal knows. That may be all your school system knows.
1982, Bobby Supak was the building test coordinator. Then
and
you're going to be the
Air Supply had the number one hit. Then they're going to, you're going to do everything the way their school counselor did it.
Right.
But we've come a long way, baby. So
call me baby. I've asked you repeatedly.
We've come a long way, baby. So we have, and so we need to use that National School Counseling Week and advocate and show, educate, advocate, all those things. But it did not all just happen that I have more control over my program. It took a while. It took advocating and data.
Well, and that's true. Like, you may have to suck it up, Buttercup, for a couple of years and actually do it, but keep log of every single activity that you do, because at the end of that year, at the end of the second year, you're going to have data to show, hey, you know what? I'm spending 90% of my time at lunchroom duty, and I just don't think that that's the most effective use of my time. And you're going to be able to show how you could use. Now, the second part of this is, if there are things that you're doing make it work for you. Kim and I have a friend who's a school counselor, and she was told that she was going to have to start running a reading intervention group. Well, guess what? We're not supposed to be doing running a reading intervention group. But she turned it into, she said, okay, if I have to do this, we're going to read what I want them to read. And we're going to work on skills like relationship skills in addition to their reading. And so she made this small group work for her school counseling program.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, all of this is said with the, if you are clearly in a situation that is a true violation of ethically, your time is not being used as, I mean, we're talking within boundaries, but if you are feeling like this is, then all bets off and you do what you've got to do to get out of that situation. So we're talking about pretty much everybody's going to have some things that don't necessarily fall as a school counselor, and that's unfortunate. And you work to get to use your time where it's best fitted as a school counselor. So,
and don't struggle alone, I would say. Like, find those people. You know, your administrator may be the person that can help you. Once they find out, they may know of a way to get you out of that rut. But you may have, I know Kim, your counselor, coordinator, supervisor is the biggest advocate of counselors that I've ever met in my life.
Absolutely.
And so she'll go to bat for you. Yeah. Yes,
you find somebody who can help get you on the track that is going to be where our time is supposed to be spent. So anyway, good luck on that. I mean, I think we're all there. We're all wearing hats that we don't necessarily want to wear. And let me just say the last 2 years, I think we really wore some hats that we were like, okay, but it was all hands on deck. But now as we start to get back into our routine, hopefully, then we hope that everybody can spend their time as we should be spending our time. And if you don't know what that is, look on the Ask website and it will show you.
Okay.
That's it.
That was quick and easy. So a couple of things. Number one, we're going to get back to having guests. You guys have had to listen to us for long enough, but we do have
sick of you.
I'm so sick of it. We do have some great guests that are in the hopper. And so we're going to get back to having guests and hearing from actual professionals than from people who just pretend to be professionals. Okay, so that's coming up. The second thing is I would like to ask a favor of our listeners. If you would not mind, would you review our podcast? And you can do that, especially on Apple Podcasts. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can scroll down to the bottom and you can give us, 5 stars or however many stars you want to give us. And a comment really helps. I think the last review we got was October of 2021, and that's embarrassing. So full transparency right here. We're just asking if you wouldn't mind to go review it. Anything else?
That sounds no. I think you've groveled enough. So, as school counselors are the busiest people in the world, so we know how busy you are. But we have a lot of listeners, just not a lot that have time to review. So
that's true.
Sally, if you're listening, I don't know who Sally is, but there's got to be a Sally out there. Amy, Carol, Juanita.
I feel guilty because they are the busiest people I know, and I feel guilty asking them to do one more thing.
Here's one more thing. We'd appreciate it. We'd appreciate it. We would appreciate it.
Yes. And share the podcast with your favorite school counselor friend too while you're at it. Okay. Also, you can join us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. We have people that are joining our course. It's an autonomous course that you can do on your own. And so we always have people signing up for that, and we're very grateful. We see that and we appreciate you guys. And if we can help you with anything, don't hesitate to send us a message. And who knows, if you ask us a question, you may be the next person that we talk about here on this podcast in a good way.
Maybe.
All right. Have a good week.